Hey guys, Scott here. I have tested out the new Skull Merchant for about 4 hours on the PTB now. Let's go over the good news first. The good news is the 3-gen playstyle is effectively countered. I'm sure some psycho is going to find some way to kind of do it, but it is significantly weaker than it was before, which is very obviously for the health of the game a good thing, because that is without a doubt the most boring thing in the entire game. Hour-long Skull Merchant matches, it was basically legendary at this point. So the good news is that is gone. The bad news is she got nothing in return. She is terrible. She's a terrible killer that no one will play. There are so many issues with her power in terms of being effective, and there's so many conflicting ideals that it really does seem like a cobbled together attempt to just remove the 3-gen thing and not really give a shit about what actually happens to the killer. Which, again, on one end, fine, whatever. I hate Skull Merchant, so nothing of value lost in my opinion. And all we did was, there's no more 3-genning problem. But, man, the more fun killers we have in the game, the less, or the more diluted the unfun killer pool is. So there's more chance to go against fun killers, and it's just going to be a good thing. But this killer is not fun to play. She's not strong. She just has nothing. She has nothing going for her. Her main playstyle right now, it kind of strikes me as like a weaker knight. Because it's the same sort of playstyle. If you get to a loop with Knight, and you get to a loop with Skull Merchant, you drop a drone, you drop a guard. If you're in a corner of the map, the guard is going to get you a hit every single time. If you drop a drone, well, it goes into the air, it moves away, it resets if you run under it. So if you go around the loop and run under your own drone, it resets again, so that disables it. It needs direct line of sight now. It's not just like an active zone like old Skull Merchant where you could just be in it, but you don't have to actually physically see the drone. Now it needs direct line of sight at all times to build up the lock-on. And then once it finally does build up the lock-on after you've used it 36 times on a bunch of different loops, then they get injured and they get a claw trap on them. And then you start moving slightly faster. And just the amount of effort it takes to get a claw trap on somebody. It's funny, if you actually play against bots play against this correctly. They will go for you hitting them. They'll leave the loop as soon as you put a drone up every time, because getting hit is better than having a claw trap on you, because getting a claw trap on you injures you. It's the same thing as getting hit, and now you also have a claw trap on, so now she moves faster as well. So there's no reason to ever stay at a loop when she puts up a drone if you are healthy. Now, if you're injured, well, it just puts you into deboon, so who gives a shit? Just stay there anyway. If she does it again, then you become hindered by 10%. So the amount of time it takes to set all that up is frankly extremely high in terms of how quick games can go. It takes too long to set all that up. And then once you are in that scenario, moving 10% slower is a massive debuff to the point where, well, the survivor doesn't really have much options anymore either. So it kind of is like an old Legion scenario where eventually she's guaranteed a hit no matter how good or bad she is. And that doesn't feel good, but also it takes so long to do it that she's a terrible killer. And I tried a bunch of different add-ons. Like I just have no way of conceptualizing how I'm supposed to play this killer effectively. I tried setting up drones in choke points, like, so maybe don't put them up in the middle of a loop, use them in choke points and things like that. So as they're leaving the loop, they're going to run through that, right? So maybe that's how you're supposed to do it. But no, the thing is, because they need direct line of sight now, and they didn't make the AoE bigger. So the AoE was relative to it working on people that are standing still. So it needs to be small because you didn't want it to hold multiple generators at once. So the AoE was tiny because it affected people standing still. But now since it only affects people that are moving, you're in the scenario where it's so small, people just run through the entire thing and they don't even get a stack of lock-on. And it just accomplishes essentially nothing. And that's if you set it as, if you set them in choke points, people will just run through them and nothing really even happens. Because they're so small and it only works when they're moving. I don't know. People just pretty much ignored my shit the entire time. When they were injured. Again, obviously, when you're healthy, the correct call is always to leave the loop. That is always the correct option. But then when you're injured, you just sort of just ignore it. You ignore it until you eventually get slowed down, and then that's it. That's the end of that. So overall, 3-gen Merchant is dead, but the actual gameplay of the killer is just, frankly, it's just horrendous. It is incredibly boring. There is zero skill component. Maybe I still just haven't figured something out yet. I tried putting it at choke points. I tried using it mid-chase. I even tried throwing on Lethal Pursuer and using the stealth that you get from throwing a drone into the air to get a grab off a generator at the start. It did work once, which was cool, but every stealth killer can do that, so that's like a whole gimmick just for one moment in the game. That's not even exciting. Using the drones for stealth mid-chase, again, is as effective as just moonwalking. So they know you're chasing you. They don't need the heartbeat because they know they're chasing you. So the only good part about being, undetectable is you lose your red light. But again, that can just be mimicked by moonwalking. So even using that in chase aggressively for stealth is just worse than every other stealth killer. So there's just nothing redeeming about her. She's just boring. She's bad. There's no skill involved whatsoever to her. It's basically just night gameplay, but even worse because it doesn't guarantee a hit anymore. Just absolute dumpster fire, trash can, terrible design for a killer. And I've mostly been singing their praises lately. The last 2 killers they made I thought were really good. I thought the Alien chapter, for the most part, a couple of things needed a tweaking. The map was great. I like Singularity a lot. This is not new content. It's a mid-chapter, so I'll give them some slack. But yeah, this just seems like they tried to salvage something that was unsalvageable. As soon as I saw her first version on the PTB many, many months ago, I said, this is an irredeemable killer. There is nothing you can do to fix this. And so far, that still seems to be the case. This is a trash can killer.